I, 32M, and my ex-wife Kimberly, 31F, had been married for 5 years before everything fell apart. We first met during our junior year in college when we were paired for a group project. Kimberly was the smartest person in our class and I was immediately drawn to her ambition and intelligence. We started dating after the project ended and continued our relationship for 3 years before getting married. Kimberly came from a wealthy family and had always been career-focused. Her parents, especially her father, pushed her to prioritize her career over everything else. When we got married, we both agreed to wait before having kids. I respected her decision as I also wanted us to be financially stable before starting a family. We both worked hard in our respective fields. I was in software development while she worked in corporate finance. After 2 years of marriage, when we were both settled in our careers and had bought our dream house, we decided to try for a baby. Kimberly was excited about becoming a mother and we spent months preparing, reading parenting books, planning the nursery, and even discussing potential names. We tried for months but nothing happened. Initially, we weren't too worried as we knew these things take time. Kimberly tracked her cycle religiously and we made sure to try during her fertile window. After 6 months of trying with no success, Kimberly started getting anxious. One day, she came home from work saying her colleague had recommended a fertility specialist, Dr. Anderson, 45M. Her colleague had successfully conceived twins under his care and highly praised his expertise. We looked him up online and found great reviews about his practice. He seemed experienced and professional, so we decided to schedule a consultation. Dr. Anderson's clinic was one of the most expensive in the city, but we thought it would be worth it if it helped us have a baby. During our first meeting, he came across as very knowledgeable and compassionate. He listened to our concerns patiently and suggested running some comprehensive tests on both of us to identify any potential issues. The test results showed that I had normal sperm count and motility. However, Dr. Anderson said Kimberly had some hormonal imbalances that were affecting her fertility. He prescribed her several medications and told us to continue trying while monitoring her hormone levels regularly. Kimberly had to visit the clinic twice a week for blood tests and checkups. Months passed but we still couldn't conceive. Every negative pregnancy test hit Kimberly hard. She would cry for hours and I felt helpless seeing her in pain. Whenever I suggested maybe we should get a second opinion or try a different doctor, Kimberly would get extremely defensive. She would start screaming about how I was trying to blame her for our fertility issues and that Dr. Anderson was the only doctor who understood her condition properly. I started noticing changes in Kimberly's behavior about a year into our treatment. She began spending more time at the clinic for her appointments. Sometimes she would be gone for 3 to 4 hours for what she claimed were routine checkups. When I offered to accompany her to these appointments, she would make excuses saying it was just basic stuff and I shouldn't miss work. She also started paying more attention to her appearance before these appointments, doing her hair nicely, wearing makeup, and dressing up in her best outfits. I found this odd but convinced myself that maybe looking good helped her feel more confident during this difficult time. Kimberly also became very protective of her phone. She would take it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I happened to walk by when she was texting, she would quickly lock her screen. She started working late more often and sometimes went out with work friends without inviting me along. When I expressed concern about these changes, she accused me of being controlling and said I was adding to her stress about our fertility issues. Last week, everything came crashing down. I was cleaning our home office as we were planning to convert it into a nursery if our next round of treatment was successful. While organizing the bookshelf, I found a leather-bound diary hidden behind some old college textbooks. I recognized it as Kimberly's diary. She used to write in it regularly during college, but I thought she had stopped years ago. I know reading someone's diary is wrong and invasive. I had never done it before in our relationship. But something about her recent behavior had been bothering me and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. With shaking hands, I opened the diary to recent entries. What I read destroyed my world completely. Kimberly had been having an affair with Dr. Anderson for the past 3 years. It started during one of her checkups when he complimented her appearance and asked her out for coffee to discuss her treatment plan in detail. She wrote about how attractive she found him and how his maturity and success made her feel things she had never felt with me. The worst part was discovering that she had gotten pregnant twice during our marriage. Both times, she had aborted the pregnancies because she wasn't sure if they were mine or Dr. Anderson's. She wrote in detail about her guilt but also about how she couldn't bring herself to end her relationship with him. There were entries about how they would laugh about me during their meetings, how clueless I was about their affair and how I kept suggesting seeing other doctors without realizing why she wanted to stick with him. I felt physically sick reading these entries. The level of betrayal was beyond anything I could have imagined. Not only had she cheated on me for years, but she had also killed our potential children without even giving me a chance to be their father. All those times I had held her while she cried about not being able to conceive, she had actually terminated pregnancies behind my back. I photographed several pages of the diary as evidence before confronting Kimberly. When she came home that evening, I asked her directly about her relationship with Dr. Anderson. At first, she tried to deny everything, saying I was being paranoid. But when I showed her the photographs of her diary entries, she broke down completely. Through her tears, she admitted to everything, the affair, the abortions, all of it. She tried to justify her actions by saying she had felt lonely and insecure about our fertility struggles. She claimed Dr. Anderson had taken advantage of her vulnerable state, but her diary entries told a different story. She begged me not to leave her, promising to end things with Dr. Anderson and find a new doctor. She said we could start fresh and try for a baby again. I couldn't even look at her. I packed some clothes and essential items and left that night. I went to my brother Mike's, 35M, place as he lived nearby. When I told him everything, he was furious but not entirely surprised. He revealed that he had seen Kimberly and Dr. Anderson having lunch together at a restaurant few months ago, looking very intimate. He hadn't said anything because he wasn't sure about what he saw and didn't want to create problems in our marriage without concrete evidence. The next day, I contacted a divorce lawyer and filed for divorce. I also reported Dr. Anderson to the medical board for having an inappropriate relationship with his patient. Thanks to the diary entries I had photographed, I had solid proof of both Kimberly's infidelity and Dr. Anderson's unprofessional conduct. My lawyer assured me that given the circumstances, Kimberly wouldn't be entitled to any alimony. Kimberly's family has been calling me continuously, saying I destroyed their daughter's life and career by reporting Dr. Anderson. They said I should have handled this privately instead of making it public. But I don't care anymore. Both of them deserve whatever consequences come their way. I refuse to be quiet about their betrayal just to protect their reputations. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my original post, and the situation has gotten even more complicated than I could have imagined. The medical board's investigation into Dr. Anderson opened up a massive can of worms that nobody expected. After my report, 5 other women came forward with similar stories about his predatory behavior during fertility treatments. 2 of these women were married like Kimberly and had also terminated pregnancies that might have been his. One woman, Lisa, 38F, was particularly devastated as she had been trying for a baby for over 8 years. She revealed that Dr. Anderson had manipulated her into a physical relationship by claiming he could fast-track her fertility treatment. When she became pregnant and expressed doubts about the baby's paternity, he pressured her into getting an abortion, threatening to tell her husband about their affair. Another victim, Rachel, 29F, shared an even more disturbing story. She said Dr. Anderson had threatened to deliberately sabotage her fertility treatment if she didn't comply with his advances. He told her he could either help her become a mother or ensure she never had children. The choice was hers. She gave in to his demands out of desperation to have a baby. When she finally did get pregnant, she immediately switched doctors, too afraid to continue under his care. The medical board suspended Dr. Anderson's license immediately after these allegations came to light. The police got involved when they discovered evidence of medical malpractice and potential insurance fraud in his practice. They're currently investigating whether he falsified medical records or prescribed unnecessary treatments to keep patients coming back. Yesterday, Kimberly showed up at my workplace unannounced. She was a complete mess, crying, makeup smeared, hair disheveled. She caused such a scene that my colleagues had to call security. She kept screaming about how I had ruined her life by reporting Dr. Anderson. Apparently, she lost her job at the finance firm after the scandal became public. Dr. Anderson's wife had tracked her down at her workplace and confronted her in front of everyone, calling her a homewrecker and exposing their affair to all her colleagues. Kimberly's reputation in our professional circle is completely destroyed. Most of our mutual friends have cut ties with her after learning about the abortions. She blamed me for everything, saying I could have kept this private and gotten divorced quietly instead of involving the medical board. She seems more concerned about her reputation than the fact that she betrayed me or that Dr. Anderson was preying on vulnerable women. Through a mutual friend, I learned that Kimberly and Dr. Anderson had been making plans to leave their respective spouses and start a new life together. They had purchased property in Colorado under an LLC, planning to relocate there after getting divorces. But as soon as the investigation started, Dr. Anderson completely cut ties with Kimberly. He blocked her number and told her not to contact him again as he tried to save himself from the legal consequences. My brother Mike suggested I get a restraining order against Kimberly as she keeps showing up at places where I might be. Last week, she tried to ambush me at our local gym. The day before that, she was waiting outside my favorite coffee shop. It's like she's stalking me, trying to get me to talk to her. I've documented all these incidents on my lawyer's advice. Kimberly has been desperately trying to contact my parents too. She showed up at their house last Sunday, crying about how she's jobless and can't pay her rent. She asked them for money, claiming that since they had always treated her like a daughter, they should help her in this difficult time. My parents were horrified by her audacity and asked her to leave. They've blocked her number, but she keeps creating new email addresses to contact them. Her parents have also started harassing my family. Her father, who always acted so high and mighty about his daughter's career achievements, now calls my parents daily to guilt-trip them. He says we destroyed their daughter's reputation in society and owe it to them to help her financially until she finds another job. Her mother even tried to organize an intervention with our extended family members, claiming that I was being cruel by not giving Kimberly a second chance. The other day, I ran into Dr. Anderson's wife at the courthouse where I was meeting my lawyer. She approached me and apologized for not realizing what her husband was doing. She revealed that she had found similar journals in their home detailing his affairs with other patients over the years. She's filing for divorce and plans to testify against him if the case goes to court. She also mentioned that she had hired a private investigator who uncovered evidence that Dr. Anderson might have more victims who haven't come forward yet. The hardest part of all this is realizing how many lives Dr. Anderson and Kimberly destroyed with their selfish actions. Those women who came forward, their marriages, their dreams of having children, their trust in medical professionals, all shattered because of one man's predatory behavior and women like Kimberly who enabled him. Some of our mutual friends suggested that maybe Kimberly was also a victim of his manipulation, but her diary entries clearly showed she was a willing participant who enjoyed the thrill of their affair. I'm grateful that I found out the truth when I did, but some days the weight of everything feels overwhelming. My lawyer says the divorce proceedings are moving forward smoothly given the evidence we have, but Kimberly's constant attempts to contact me and play the victim are exhausting. I've started looking for jobs in other cities, thinking maybe a fresh start somewhere else would be best for my mental health. Update 2. 2 months have passed since my last update, and the investigation into Dr. Anderson has revealed even more disturbing details than anyone expected. The medical board's thorough review of his patient files showed that he had been deliberately giving false fertility diagnoses to keep patients coming back for unnecessary treatments. In Kimberly's case, they found that there was absolutely nothing wrong with her hormones. All those medications he prescribed, all those treatments we paid thousands for, they were completely unnecessary. The investigators found a pattern in his practice. He would typically target women from wealthy backgrounds or those with good insurance coverage. He would diagnose them with various fertility issues that were hard to disprove, then prescribe expensive treatments and medications. Many of these women, desperate to have children, never questioned his diagnoses or sought second opinions. Some of them went through years of unnecessary hormonal treatments that could have long-term health consequences. Kimberly tried to contact me through her lawyer last week. She claims she's struggling financially and unable to find employment due to all the publicity around the case. Apparently, whenever potential employers Google her name, they find news articles about the scandal. Her lawyer suggested that since I benefited from her high income during our marriage, I had some obligation to help her now. I simply blocked the lawyer's number. Then came another shocking revelation. Kimberly's lawyer mentioned that she's pregnant with Dr. Anderson's baby. The pregnancy apparently happened right before the scandal broke. But now Dr. Anderson wants nothing to do with her or the baby. He denied being the father and blocked all contact with her. His lawyer sent her a cease and desist letter when she tried to contact him about the pregnancy. The man who supposedly loved her so much that she was willing to destroy our marriage for him has completely abandoned her. Dr. Anderson's wife's divorce was finalized last week. She got almost everything in the settlement due to his infidelity and pending criminal charges. She's been cooperating with the investigators and provided them with years' worth of financial records that showed how Dr. Anderson had been hiding his illegal income from unnecessary treatments. The police found offshore accounts where he had stashed millions of dollars scammed from his patients. The investigation also uncovered that Kimberly might have been more involved in Dr. Anderson's schemes than initially thought. Some of his former staff members came forward saying she helped him falsify insurance claims and medical records. She would use her financial expertise to advise him on hiding the money. There's a possibility she might face criminal charges herself for being complicit in his fraud. My parents heard from Kimberly's sister Emily that Kimberly was hospitalized last week after experiencing severe complications with her pregnancy. She had a miscarriage and needed emergency surgery. Her parents immediately blamed me for her condition, saying the stress I caused by exposing their affair led to this. Emily had the audacity to suggest that I should visit Kimberly in the hospital to show support during this difficult time. I declined. It's strange, but I felt nothing when I heard about her miscarriage. A year ago, the thought of Kimberly losing a baby would have devastated me. I would have rushed to be by her side. But now, after everything she did, after learning about all the pregnancies she terminated without even telling me, I can't bring myself to care. Her parents called me heartless for not showing any sympathy, but I reminded them about the 2 babies she aborted that might have been mine. Dr. Anderson is facing multiple lawsuits from his former patients. The medical board permanently revoked his license after finding evidence that he had been practicing medicine under the influence of cocaine. They found that he often performed procedures while high, putting his patients at serious risk. Some of his former nurses reported that Kimberly would sometimes bring him drugs, using her fertility appointments as cover. The district attorney is building a strong criminal case against him. The charges include medical malpractice, insurance fraud, drug possession, and sexual exploitation of patients. They're also investigating whether Kimberly and some of his other girlfriends could be charged as accomplices. The prosecutor warned that anyone who helped him commit these crimes would face consequences, regardless of their claims of being manipulated by him. I've stopped following the case closely as I want to move on with my life. But mutual friends keep updating me about new developments. They say Kimberly has become a shell of her former self. She's living in a small apartment paid for by her parents, as she can't afford rent anymore. Her once perfect life has completely fallen apart, and for the first time, she's facing real consequences for her actions. Update 3. It's been 7 months since everything happened, and life has taken many unexpected turns. The criminal trial against Dr. Anderson started last month, and it was even worse than anyone anticipated. He initially tried to plead not guilty, claiming all relationships were consensual and any medical decisions were made in good faith. However, when prosecutors presented evidence from his phone and computer, showing how he bragged to friends about manipulating vulnerable patients, he changed his plea to guilty. Dr. Anderson was sentenced to 5 years in prison in order to pay $2.8 million in restitution to his victims. The judge was particularly harsh in his sentencing remarks, calling him a predator who abused his position of trust to exploit women at their most vulnerable. Several of his victims gave impact statements during the trial, detailing how his actions destroyed their marriages and their dreams of having children. Kimberly was called as a witness but ended up invoking her Fifth Amendment rights to avoid self-incrimination. The prosecutor's office offered her a deal, immunity in exchange for testimony against Dr. Anderson and information about other potential victims. She took the deal and revealed everything about their scheme. It turned out she had helped him launder money through fake companies and warned him whenever insurance companies started asking questions. After the trial, Kimberly moved back to her hometown 3 states away. Her sister told mutual friends that she's working as a receptionist at a small medical clinic, quite a fall from her previous 6-figure corporate job. She sent me a long email last week, apologizing for everything. She wrote about how she's in therapy now and realizes the magnitude of what she did. She said she thinks about the babies she aborted every day and will never forgive herself. I read the email but didn't respond. Some wounds are too deep to heal. A few of our mutual friends have been suggesting that I should forgive her now that she's suffered enough. They say holding on to anger isn't healthy and that she's clearly learned her lesson. But they don't understand that this isn't about punishment or revenge anymore. The trust is broken beyond repair, and I've moved on with my life. I sold our house last month. I couldn't stand living there with all those memories. I kept seeing signs of her betrayal everywhere: the home office where I found her diary, the kitchen where we'd excitedly discussed baby names, the bedroom where she probably texted him while lying next to me. The house sold quickly, and I used the money to buy a condo in a different city where I accepted a promotion. My family has been incredibly supportive through everything. My parents, who once loved Kimberly like a daughter, have come to terms with what happened. My mom said she's grateful we found out before having children with her. Mike and his wife have been amazing too, always including me in family events so I don't feel alone. I'm not ready to date yet, though I've had opportunities. The whole experience has made me cautious about trusting people. Sometimes I still get angry thinking about their betrayal, not just the affair, but the calculated way they deceived me for years. But I know I made the right decision by exposing them instead of keeping quiet. Who knows how many more women Dr. Anderson would have victimized if someone hadn't stopped him. I've learned that sometimes the people closest to us can cause the most damage, but that doesn't mean we should stop living. I'm focusing on my career, reconnecting with old friends, and planning a trip abroad next year. Life isn't what I imagined it would be at this point, but maybe that's not such a bad thing after all.